What did you do to him? He goes to a cemetery.
Pull yourself together.
Why?
Because you have to start cooking dinner, okay? You can cook, right?
Your father seems to think so.
Welcome to another episode of Dinner and a Movie with Santino Domani, the channel dedicated to reviving the lost art of bringing people together with good food and good film. I am Santino, and today we'll be continuing our theme of reviewing films riding on the precipice of annihilation at the hands of the unholy alliance comprising the Ministry of Truth, whose devoted fascist lackeys are lovingly flushing our history down the memory hole, one beloved classic film at a time. And while I'm tenderly dipping my pitties into the hot tub of political incorrectness and flirting with my first YouTube strike, we'll be making a modified version of a classic hot and sour soup that my family is lovingly dubbed Sweet and Sour Peasant Soup.
The hell is sweet and sour peasant soup? I don't know. I made it up.
Which also happens to contain enough soy to make a Cal State University teacher's assistant blush. So while it's delicious, make it sparingly, lest ye be suffering the consequences. So dust off your jean shorts, crack open a Zima, drop a Purin tablet, hell, make it two.
So no more, so don't ask me.
And lock the crucifix in the closet because we're busting out of it. Today we're peeping at the Birdcage.
Put the tea on. I have stories.
Welcome, dear breeder, to South Beach, Florida, circa 1990-something or other, where they're not just saying gay, they're shouting it from the roofs of their squeaky clean neon pink cabanas. Meet nightclub owner and local mustache aficionado, Armand Goldman, played by the funniest man ever to slip into a girdle. Close. No. In the ballpark. Oh, he was really good.
Getting warmer.
Warm. Warmer. Disco.
Robin Williams. Armand is the owner and operator of Birdcage, a swarthy downtown nightclub with a twist. And some pulls, and several tucks and grunts. Successful though it may be, the Birdcage is not without its overabundance of drama, not the least of which coming at the impeccably manicured hands of his best friend with a twist. That is to say, life partner, romantic accomplice,
I don't know the right thing.
Albert Goldman. And as a prominent and well-known entertainer within the community, he also happens to be the biggest pull at the popular night spot. But on this particular evening, there's trouble in paradise for the dynamic duo, as dear Albie suspects his beloved Armand has been seeing another man as of late, and, lo and behold, his hysterical suspicions are actually confirmed for once, and we're introduced to Armand's biological son, Val.
How can you have a son? I was confused and it was a very painful time for me. And I want to share your pain, but you hide from me.
No, calm down. You see, Albert, who's
Practically abreast.
and has been more than happy to take on the role of surrogate mother for Val, is over the moon to see his son, who's recently returned home from college with some big news to share. He's getting married, you see, to a 17-year-old girl, who also just happens to be the daughter of a Republican senator. Wanting nothing but the best for their son, Albert and Armand insist that 20-year-old Val is simply too young to get married. And naturally, Val argues that while it may be true that he's young and hasn't known the bride-to-be for very long, he's sure to make it perfectly and reasonably clear that he's also arrogant and prodigiously entitled, by jumping at the opportunity to shit all over his father's wisdom, and by claiming to have mastered the art of building a successful relationship because, like, he went to college and and stuff. But the paella really hits the fan when a series of unfortunate events compel Val's fiance's family, the Keeleys, to haul ass down to South Beach and kick the wedding into high gear, realizing that his parents' lifestyle could blow through his wedding plans like a big homosexual hurricane.
Stupid trailer! Whose dog is this? I'm blowing everything.
Val settles even more comfortably into his position as an entitled twat when he insists that not only do his parents need to completely rearrange their living situation in order to accommodate the tastes of his prospective in-laws, but Albert, a person who's devoted his entire life to Val's happiness and fruition, needs to up and fuck off somewhere else. Because, you see, his presence might sour the senator's opinion on the wedding, in which case Val and Barbara might have to do the unthinkable and get married in such a manner that wasn't absolutely 100% their very most favorite way, like a pair of fucking adults. And God save us, we certainly can't have that. And what follows is an engaging, funny, and touching
blazing saddles, man.
No, truly touching film experience, which has a great deal of good things to say about traditional family values and the importance of meaningful relationships, regardless of whatever package it might come wrapped in.
Hey, man,
What the hell is going on, Mary?
Now, if you've been around as long as I have, you remember a time when not every person regarded themselves as the embodiment of perfection, entirely blemish and odor-free, and utterly incapable of acknowledging or, God save us, apologizing for even the slightest of indiscretions. Time was people like this were few and far between because back in the dark ages, when concepts such as shame and dignity were a thing, society used to look down upon narcissistic behavior and punish it with belittlement and ostracization. But riddle me this, Thomas Hobbes, what do you get when you cross a society of people who have never known famine, war, predation, or widespread illness with a society whose traditional means for socialization, things like in-person interaction and insightful discussion, is replaced with one that incentivizes disingenuousness, personal authenticity, as opposed to excellence of character and merits, and prioritizing the quantity of their quote-unquote social circle, as opposed to the quality of it. Why you get a society that has become so complacent in its comfort that victimhood itself has been afforded its own place as a status symbol, and success is measured in terms of how persecuted one can make themselves appear to be. What invariably follows is a massive wave of its own population not only engaged in an all-out sprint to the bottom, but also in finding new and innovative ways to weaken or outright destroy themselves in an effort to make the bottom even lower so they can boast to their enablers on social media that a new bottom exists, they occupy it, and they're doing so with great bravery and as with little dignity as humanly possible. And if, heaven forbid, their new status in the uber victim class creates any sort of inconvenience for them whatsoever, not only is there absolutely nothing they could have possibly done that would make them responsible for it, but also it's everybody else who needs to change and adapt to accommodate and celebrate their victimhood, lest ye be suffering the consequences. What comes next is a society that finds absolutely no value in the virtues that have served as the bedrock for peace and stability within a civilized society in the past. I mean, why bother with developing such character traits as humility, integrity, or discipline when all you need to get into college is a personal statement affirming your identity as an indigenous transforming person of tint, a rape whistle, and a fucking pencil. Until, of course, someone invariably insists that a pencil, long, hard, and pointy as they tend to be, is a phallocentric symbol, and as such, its very presence within higher education serves as a dog whistle for other such misogynistic white nationalist institutions like Dick's Sporting Goods and Hebrew National, and of course, Johnson & Johnson. And I bring it up here because I consider the Birdcage a film that does a considerable job arguing against a society shifting away from these values and towards one that emphasizes personal authenticity and taking pride in aspects of your life you have absolutely no control over, like, hypothetically speaking, let's say, just for example, your skin color, or who you prefer to do the horizontal monster mash with, or how you prefer to do it with them, as well as celebrating quote-unquote achievements in which absolutely nothing was done in order to actually achieve them, save for maybe discovering a way to physically manifest your personal sense of self-preservation, covering it in ranch dressing and devouring it whole.
How dare you say that to my face?
Well, I'd say it behind your back, but my car's only got half a tank of gas.
In other words, you might be surprised to hear that a large part of the reason why I love this film as much as I do is because I think that it does more to laud what I consider to be traditional conservative values than even most media today claiming to target more conservative audiences.
What?
Stick with me. Albert takes on a desirable role as a mother figure. The role is emphasized as opposed to the aesthetic qualities of the person filling that role, and quite successfully, I might add. For example, when when Albert first confronts Val about the proposed marriage, he even goes so far as to warn him about the predatory nature of women who are unabashedly loose with their virtue. Can't do that anymore. And if I may be so bold, how refreshing. That is, to see someone who actually holds sacred the idea of being maternal towards a child, as opposed to repulsed by the idea of shouldering it as an unfortunate consequence of their degeneracy. At this point, I'm not sure I actually give a shit about what parts are where. Albert Goldman conducts himself as more of a woman and loving mother than 90% of the slags swiping their way right into a studio apartment full of calico cats and empty wine boxes. The emphasis is on the values, not on immutable traits that are unearned and say nothing about the most important aspects of a person. Forget for a moment the argument about who it is that can actually fulfill these roles with what degree of success. Without question, Albert values his roles as a maternal figure and loving husband above more than anything, including, as we'll come to find out, himself. Despite how aesthetically silly and unconventional the dynamic appears, as it's even acknowledged by Albert and Armand themselves,
You're not a woman.
Oh, you bastard.
consider for a moment just how refreshing it is to see the role of a loving and faithful but vulnerable spouse and mother in place of the empowered, indestructible sex object who pretends to be indignant at being viewed as a sex object, or the perpetual victim whose problems never stem from her character flaws but rather from nefarious or indifferent white men, and as such is never forced to self-reflect and then therefore can never be allowed to grow in any substantive way. What results are female leads that are about as warm and personable as an ass tumor. Albert swallows his pride and makes an unthinkable sacrifice for his son, humiliating and debasing himself in the worst possible way. And kiss my grits, the film doesn't devolve into a diatribe against Val, nor does a black woman burst through the front door and start lecturing Albert about what it means to be a proud woman, or spout tired axioms about lived experiences and self-identity trumping even the happiness of your own damn children in terms of importance. Family is more important than Albert's identity because above all else his family is his identity, and he values it even more than his very dignity and sense of self-respect. This is made especially clear by Albert's reaction to the decision made by Armand and Val at the 11th hour to ask Albert to leave for the evening so Val's biological mother, a woman who's never even met Val, can assume the role to keep things on an even keel. Up until that point, Albert would meet every minor inconvenience or moderately unfortunate turn of events with an over-the-top, emotional, feminine, and hilarious outburst. He would cry out or pretend to faint or strike Armand in some exaggerated but otherwise innocuous display. But that doesn't happen here. When the dagger goes in for real this time, Albert regresses. He just goes belly up. There's no overly dramatic display or vicious knockdown, drag-out fight because he feels like he's just lost everything that was worth fighting for.
I just wanted so much to help you.
It's his all is lost moment, where he's forced to decide, stay the course and accept defeat, or change tacks and fight to get it all back. And it's here where Albert overcomes his flaw and completes his character arc. It's here that he has actually every reason to be in the pit of despair and stay there, but he doesn't. For the first time that we can see, he fights against it. He stands up, tucks himself accordingly, and says, "Fuck you both. You're wrong. I'm not going anywhere and neither are you. I'm going to help you because I love you and that's what we do for each other. And as long as I'm drawing breath, I'll do what I can for you when you need me." Albert is defined by his actions. It's what he does, the commitments he holds fast to, and the sacrifices he makes that truly define him. He doesn't cling to trite labels that only describe aspects of himself that he's had absolutely zero control over. They don't matter, not really. They're fun and openly silly, easily mocked, and well,
It's just camp! You know, kidsy fun!
exactly. But it's his role, the traditional maternal role, one of the most difficult and noble roles a person can take on, that is celebrated. It swoops in and saves the day at the last minute. It bridges what's otherwise an impossibly wide gap between two people. And most importantly, it makes the Goldmans whole. They're broken without it, and at this point, it's been made perfectly clear. And at the risk of sounding womanish, we need more of it. We need our moms back. Women who take pride in the strength in their hearts, not in their portfolios or their Facebook profiles. More and more every day, we're seeing what a culture looks like without the warmth and compassion of women who haven't been made to feel ashamed to place value in their family over their freedom to do whatever they want, whenever they want, with no sense of duty or obligation to people who love and depend on them. A couple of generations of that, next thing you know, you look up, you got 150 million Amber Heards running around, dropping grumpies in your fancy linens and carrying on.
That's not good.
Yeah, except you're not Johnny Depp, so you can't have one of your manservants just throw it on top of the pile with all the others and grab another set from one of the many fancy linen rooms hidden strategically around the house in a vain attempt to detour who I've lovingly dubbed the Brown Bomber. And listen, nobody wants that, not even Captain Grumpy herself. And yeah, I'm sure I'm ruffling the feathers of wags from all walks of the political spectrum, so I guess I'll just wrap this up by putting it this way. When it comes to what I think a stand-up broad looks like, or what kind of personality a society might get the most benefit from in general, I'll take this guy.
My baby.
Over whatever the fuck this is.
A fetus is literally a parasite. Like, it is sucking the life from a mother.
Yeah.
Every single day. Like, that's literally what happens. That's not even like...
Not a mother, I'm guessing.
Like,
Every single day of the week and twice on Sunday. At any rate, I would absolutely be remiss for moving on without mentioning the outstanding performances coming from the likes of Williams, Lane, and Azaria. Williams comes through with the laughs naturally, but has no trouble reining it in when he knows he needs to pull on the heartstrings. Then there's Hank Azaria, whose name might sound familiar, but you're having a spot of bother putting a face to the name. That's because he's almost certainly most well known for his role in The Simpsons, where he voiced just about everyone in the show except one of the Simpsons. And while I firmly believe that Nathan Lane wins the Faraday Goose for the best performance in the film, I simply couldn't forgive myself if I didn't take a moment to sing Azaria's praises here. You know, it wasn't until I recently started doing voice recordings of my own that I realized that voice actors actually had any talent, and I carried that little piece of comedic bigotry with me for many, many years with very few exceptions. One of which, however, was the legendary Hank Azaria, whose vocal range and talent to convey tone and emotion without the benefit of legitimate human facial expressions or is not only unmatched, it's downright unbelievable at times. For example, consider a scene from The Simpsons, Season 7, Episode 23, Much Ado About Nothing, which was made before the brown shirts and the jackboots on the left found out we were having fun and promptly put a stop to the affair. Alright, so here's Azaria's normal speaking voice in an interview he did some time ago.
Where is Hank Azaria from? I'm from New York, specifically Queens, specifically Forest Hills, New York.
Now here he is, an American-born voice actor, voicing a character with an Indian accent, who is doing his best to imitate what the character perceives to be an American accent.
I am an American citizen after all. Apparently, I just plumb forgot about it. Who needs the infinite compassion of Ganesha when I've got Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman staring at me from Entertainment Weekly with their dead eyes?
Now, for copyright reasons, there's only so much I can play here, but I encourage anyone listening to go back and watch the scene in its entirety. Not only is it amusing, it's a masterclass in voice acting. And when you consider the endless parade of well-loved and pivotal characters Azaria plays in the show, as well as the number of instances in which those characters stirred something special up inside of us, I hope you begin to understand why I have such a reverence for this particular mic jockey. And I really don't consider myself to be speaking hyperbolically when I say that Azaria brings the full force of his skill set to the Birdcage. I've seen the movie at least a dozen times throughout the course of my life, and I did so again for the sake of this review. Despite that, I still found myself laughing so hard at times that I nearly threw up my breakfast of crushed Adderall and naltrexone mixed into a flute glass of Ensure Plus, which, by the way, can be a very expensive regurgitation if you're not privileged enough to be connected with the right medical team like I aren't. Having said that, it's absolutely Nathan Lane who steals the show here for me, and I thank my lucky stars that this film was made during a time when comedy had yet to be verboten. Lane, who, in his own personal life, has had his dues for the Meatpackers Union paid well in advance for several years now, has no trouble making light of the often stark but always present conflict of aesthetic masculinity.
Give me a moment to myself to prepare.
Let's leave her. Come on.
Contrasted against the feminine sensibilities that seem to come with the territory of keeping a P.O. box on Fire Island.
Oh, be nice!
It's no coincidence that the Birdcage is continually contrasting itself against other relationships that pop up throughout the film in one capacity or another, and I'd be lying if I said that the majority of them didn't come off a bit heavy-handed, most notably that of the Keeleys and Val and Barbara's relationships, and in my opinion the old trope of the hard-up conservative who's only indignant for the sole purpose of the story needing an odious prick to lob softball straw man arguments their way so they can look smart, yet vulnerable, and proud, yet humble in victory, was played out even in 1996 when the film was released. And there's also something insufferable about a film taking a hard stance on a questionable position, then taking liberty with the assumption that the film's audience has already taken that position for indisputably true, and then running with it, especially in a comedy, but especially in a political comedy. I mean, that's just the way films are made now, but back then it wasn't as prominent and nowhere nearly as egregious. And considering the subject matter, I don't think it's particularly sickening here, to be honest. Certainly not nearly enough to ruin the experience for me, and I doubt it would even for the staunchest of conservatives, considering how bereft of anything even remotely funny we found ourselves these days. Also, I know the story thread with Val's mother, Catherine, is there to accentuate the point that just because a romantic relationship is traditional, that is, in terms of the sex of the people occupying it, doesn't mean that it's perfect. And when you see it for what it is, the thread just feels sloppy and up its own ass. The film sets up this interesting dynamic between Val, Catherine, and Armand, and it even drops some juicy exposition, suggesting a more nefarious and unscrupulous element to Catherine. But it's just left to sit there, like a steamy turd carefully deposited on your bed by some wine-addled ex-wife. And to be honest, much like the Duchess of Defecation, the Esquiress of Excrement, the PM of BM, the woman who put the tool in stool herself, it just seems cheap, a poor attempt to try and impress a disagreeable opinion on the audience because the overall theme of the film would benefit from it, while at the same time trying to craft a narrative for the story which demands the character be something entirely different than what the filmmakers have set them up to be for the sake of pushing the theme. And for my part, it's a good example of how carelessly handled exposition can put a damper on what would otherwise be a masterful exploration and commentary on a controversial subject explored in such a unique and compelling way that has, despite its faults, established itself as a cultural pioneer of sorts, brazenly doing the conga straight into the court of public opinion through the Trojan horses of comedy, obscurity, and distracting, tight-fitting jean shorts.
We should be 100% Oprah honest with each other.
Now, if you found yourself so ensconced in your political opinions that your sense of righteous indignation overwhelmed your compulsion to laugh at the absurdity constructed and performed masterfully in this film, greetings from the States. How's the weather in Argentina?
Buenos noches, mein Führer. Yeah.
But for everyone else tuning in who's not literally Adolf Hitler, the Birdcage is a delightful little piece of propaganda that will keep you in stitches with its cheeky and disarming parody of the homosexual community. Funny, endearing, and subversive of my institutional, heteronormative bigotry though it may be, my love for this film stems from its deliberate and pronounced effort to accentuate morality and family values.
I'm 50 years old. There's only one place in the world I call home, and it's because you're there. So take it. What difference does it make if I say you can stay or you say I can stay? It's ours. From what has traditionally been perceived as a very unlikely place to find them. And it's on this point, that is the importance of understanding that good things can sometimes come from the most unlikely of places, that I think it would be appropriate to close. No, I'm not going to placate you a silly romantic tripe about how our biases and generalizations are never well-founded, or how they only serve to perpetuate hatred and unnecessary suffering. On the contrary, the biases and generalizations you've established through your ability to recognize patterns within your environment is what's kept you, and continues to keep you, out of the meat grinder every day. You show me someone who insists that all you need is love, and I'll show you someone who hasn't been to downtown Seattle recently.
Travis, just relax. Travis, do you want to smoke? Travis, you want to smoke or a candy bar?
Oh! And while it's true that our biases and generalizations are shaped over time as we become wiser through our experiences, most notably our failures and our triumphs, there's something more inspiring underlying the often drab and often insufferable human experience. Hope. Now, I'm really going to do my best to not come off as cheap or aggrandizing, but I do think that it's an important concept that ties into this film in a roundabout way. Hope means allowing yourself the opportunity to be surprised. It means not getting to the point where you've resigned yourself to your own personal sort of hell by severing yourself from the wellsprings of wonderment and open-mindedness as a matter of self-preservation. Hope means I'll keep scouring the insights of like-minded film critics in the hope that maybe one day we'll have things like comedy and well-written movies again.
Here he is, soaring through the air like a man on a flying trapeze.
But doing so knowing full well, however, that I'm probably just setting myself up for another flick in the balls. In other words, being open-minded doesn't necessarily commit oneself to being weak or too easily amenable, but in allowing yourself to strategically have it available, it can surprise you with a gift, perhaps even during a time when you need one the most. And as a wiser man than myself once said, one can, in fact, be open-minded
without being open-behinded. And it's with that pearl of wisdom from my dear friend Pablo Francisco, hashtag rest in power, hashtag only the good die hung, thoughts and prayers in the comment section, please. I'll be taking my leave. But before I do, a quick reminder that if you liked what you saw, or if you have something disparaging to say about the Irish,
I may be Irish, but I'm not stupid.
Go ahead and let me know in the comments section. Feel free to give the like button a tickle as well, and subscribe so you can have all your meal ideas and movie reviews served up to you all fresh and steamy. But until that day, this is Santino Domani saying take care of yourself, and if you can, take care of somebody else.